Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Morrow DFS. I'm here for Occupied Fantasy, helping you break down UFC 322. As always, we're going to give you guys the breakdown from a DFS angle, going to talk about our favorite plays on DraftKings as well as FanDuel. I'm going to go through every single fight, break them down, give you my leans, my picks, all that good stuff. At the end, I will have best bets for you as well. And this time, we're doing the video pre recorded. Last time, we had a lot of technical issues. It's frustrating. Obviously, would love to do it live where we can answer questions. But if you have any questions, feel free to just post them in the comments below. I will be sure to get to everyone. You could also reach me on Twitter at NickMorrowDFS. But let's get into it because I think we have 14 fights to get to on this card. Certainly a big one. A lot of great fights, too. Honestly, one of the best cards of the year. This will be taking place in Madison Square Garden. I believe the card locks at 7 p.m. Eastern. 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay, good. I checked. But yeah, a lot of name value top to bottom, a lot of really fun matchups. And with most of the fights staying together, a good card as well for DFS. So in the main event, we have Islam Makhachev moving up, vacating his lightweight title to take on Jack Della Maddalena and try to make double champ status, make history, obviously, here at welterweight, 170 pounds. Jack Della Maddalena coming off an impressive win over Bilal Muhammad, where he secured the title. Scored 106 fantasy points on DK there. Did a great job keeping that fight standing. I mean, a lot of people were saying, hey, why wasn't Bilal shooting for takedowns? I personally thought Bilal would be doing so. That seemed to be his clearest path to victory. But Jack, superior footwork, did a good job kind of circling away from him, frustrating Bilal, landing the bigger shots, and winning that fight convincingly on the scorecards. Della Maddalena is primarily a boxer, primarily a striker. Decent size for the division, which does matter here, obviously, with Islam moving up. But prior to that win over Muhammad, a nice win over Gilbert Burns, close fight against Kevin Holland and Basil Hafez prior to that one. But yeah, I mean, it seems like he's making major improvements every time we see him in the cage. The hole in his game, if there was one, is certainly the defensive grappling ability, which is likely going to matter here in a big way, obviously, against a wrestler in Makhachev. But he does have Craig Jones in his camp. He did show decent scrambling against Bilal, and it does seem like that is something, obviously, he knows he needs to and has been working on. If he's going to maintain a championship status in the division, you can't really have any holes in your game. Honestly, welterweight quickly becoming one of the better divisions in the sport, at least in the UFC. For years, obviously, Usman reigned, prior to that, Leon Edwards, but kind of this new guard. We got Della Maddalena, Islam obviously moving up. We got guys on this card in Brady and Morales, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Ian Gary is another one. The list goes on and on. Shavkat, completely forgetting about him. He's been out for a while. Bilal is still there. Usman's still sticking around. Buckley, the names. I mean, it's deep. It's a deep division, and it's fun. But Islam moving up here does have the style to kind of dominate against a lot of these guys. Looking at the statistics, he does average 3.2 takedowns per 15 minutes. And unlike some of these grapplers we see who are good at taking guys down and just kind of controlling position, Islam is very dangerous once he gets the fight there. Winning via submission in 3 of his last 5. Obviously, the nice quick win over Moicano. Moicano a bit outmatched there. It was supposed to be Armin Sarukian who took that fight for Sarukian, given the injury to Sarukian. Don't mean to use his name 10 times in one sentence, but you guys get the picture there. But a dominant champion at 155 pounds. And I will say, Islam did cut a lot of weight to consistently make 155. So moving up here, it will be interesting to see how his frame fills out come fight day. I did watch weigh-ins. I did watch the ceremonial weigh-ins with the face-offs. He's a little bit smaller than Jack, I'm not going to lie, but I don't think the gap in size is really significant enough to matter in a big way. Jack, he does have decent takedown defense, but we look at the percentage, 69%, not taking on really any wrestlers even close to the level of Makhachev. And yeah, we've seen Gilbert Burns take him down and control him for the better part of 3 rounds. We've seen Basil Hafez take him down multiple times. So yeah, I think Islam is the side here. I am pretty confident in him as the pick. And if we pull up some of the graphics from the model, rates as the second best play in terms of OF index in the model. That is not a surprise to me at all. And then 44% owned, going to be very popular. So if you do have Islam in your lineups, just keep in mind that you're probably going to want to get a little bit different elsewhere. Neither of these guys really give me cardio concerns or durability concerns, anything like that. We have seen Islam fade at times, but I do think not having to cut weight here should kind of play into a cardio improvement for him, for lack of a better word. I really do like him here. I think he gets it done. And again, he rates extremely well in the model. If you're playing a ton of lineups, it probably makes a little bit of sense to maybe hedge with some Jack. Della Maddalena is the better striker here. I don't think the margin in the striking is nearly as wide as it is in the grappling, though. But I'd be lying if I said that Islam could be in trouble if he wasn't finding his takedowns. I just think he will. He's got Khabib in his corner. They seem super locked in coming into this camp. The media's been great with them. Islam seems in good spirits too. A guy usually has to cut a ton of weight. So I like Jack. Huge fan of his. Love watching him fight. But I do think Islam's the side here. But yeah, we have another similar fight here in the co-main event between Zhang Weili and Valentina Shevchenko. But before I move on to that one, I do want to quickly touch on the money line. In the main event, we have Islam floating around minus 280 to minus 300 now, depending on your book. I mostly use DraftKings for odds on the show. We're looking at 305 right now. I think that's accurate, if I'm being completely honest. There is an angle that I'll talk about at the end of the show, a best bet I do have on Islam that I think makes it a little bit easier to play into some value, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But back to the co-main event now. We have Valentina Shevchenko floating around at minus 140, depending on your book, taking on Zhang Weili, who will be moving up a weight class here. These two are amongst the best in history in mixed martial arts, especially women's mixed martial arts, obviously. Valentina, I mean, her career's been kind of up and down over the past few years. Obviously, that's relatively speaking, though. It's up and down in title fights against the best fighters in the world. I got caught by Alexa Grasso in that choke where she lost her belt, fought to a draw in a fight I thought she won, and then dominated her the third time around. But I don't rate Grasso all that highly, if I'm being completely honest. But last time out against Manon Fiorot, she did an excellent job striking against a very big and physical fighter in Manon. Was able to mix in some grappling up against the cage and win that via decision. Looked better in that fight, I think, than she did in a lot of those Grasso fights. And prior to that, obviously some close fights against the likes of Talia Santos. But Valentina, dominant champion for years, and she should be the bigger fighter here with Weili moving up in weight, excuse me. Weili, the strawweight champion, on a 5-fight win streak of her own. She scores tremendously when it comes to DFS. Again, this and the main are obviously 5-round fights. Keep that in mind. For DFS purposes because they are for titles. Weili, though, vacating the strawweight belt, which was just captured by Mackenzie Dern. But prior to that, dominating Tatiana Suarez. Had a pretty interesting fight against Yao Zhao, really pulled away late there. Dominated Lemos, Esparza. She's on a great run. And Weili is one of my favorite fighters on the roster. I'm a huge fan of hers, but I do think there is some concern when it comes to this particular matchup because Valentina does a lot of the things well that Weili usually exploits in her opponents. For example, Weili has been grappling more lately. We saw this against Zhao and Lemos, two girls that are primarily strikers. She's not really going to have that path here, in my opinion, against Shevchenko, who has a 75% takedown defense. Could she mix it in, maybe land a timely takedown? It's possible. But again, obviously against the wrestler Suarez, she didn't really need to go there. But prior to that, 6 takedowns in those 2 fights against Zhao and Lemos. So kind of tough for her to mix that in. She is the higher volume striker in this matchup. But again, Valentina with the powerful kicks, the excellent footwork, could be tough to close distance on her here. Just a 3-inch reach advantage listed, but knowing Valentina throws so many kicks, I actually think that gap could be a little bit wider. So while I am a huge fan of Zhang Weili, and I do think she's one of the more live underdogs on this card, my pick's Valentina Shevchenko, but I do want to bring up an excerpt, from the Daily Plug here, from our writer Derek Phillips. And again, if you guys want access to the plug, he's writing up all these fights for DFS every week, giving his favorite plays, best bets, all that good stuff, trends, everything you need to win on both DraftKings and FanDuel. But he says, despite this matchup against one of the greatest fighters of all time, Zhang is the most proven DFS commodity on the slate, averaging 136.78 DK points across her current 5-fight winning streak. One of the best tournament plays on the board, and she is likely to have a sizable advantage in wrestling. Ranks higher than Shevchenko in the Occupy model on DraftKings and is projected to be nearly half the ownership. So I agree with pretty much everything Derek is saying here. I don't know that I rate Weili's wrestling much higher than Shevchenko. I think it's a bit of a wash. I do think Shevchenko's strength is going to help to even that out for her. But again, I don't want to go against the model. Usually when we see an underdog that's rating better than the favorite, we need to take notice. And Weili, not very popular, surprisingly, here, even though she is the cheaper fighter on DK, and I believe on FanDuel as well. So one of the better tournament plays certainly is Weili. I'm going to have exposure to her. I don't think I'm going to stack much. And again, I'm someone who plays mostly high risk contests, so keep that in mind. Um, but yeah, I want to have one of those two in most of my matchups or in most of my lineups, excuse me, because again, 5 round fight. I think they both could score pretty well here. Weili definitely the one who tends to score better though. So her in a win almost certainly going to be optimal. Shevchenko in a win. If a lot of underdogs are hitting, there is a world where she's not optimal. But again, look at this: 2 decisions, back-to-back fights, 146 points against Grasso, had the 8 takedowns, 102 against Fiorot, landed a decent amount of strikes there. Did score that knockdown, which helped boost that score. But I do think there's a really good shot that one of these two are optimal. But again, looking at ownership here, Valentina does project to be the most popular play on the slate. We'll talk about Wallmaker in a little bit. I actually think he's going to surpass her with some confidence, but we'll see. But again, I think Weili's one of the best tournament plays on the board. Would not be surprised at all if she were to get the win here. There's not a huge age gap here. These women are only 1 year apart, but Weili doesn't seem as weathered or I don't know. She hasn't been in as many wars. She hasn't been in the UFC as long as Valentina. Valentina also has that extensive Muay Thai background. She's looked better lately, but I will say Weili seems to be the more consistent of the two. So just take that into consideration when you're building your lineups. But again, close money line should be competitive. Let's move on to the feature bout here between Sean Brady and Michael Morales. So, winner of this fight could take on the winner of Della Maddalena Makhachev at the top of the card. This is maybe the most binary fight on the card. And when I say binary, it means it's kind of two ways this could go. There's kind of two ways that, I don't know, things could play out. So it's a closely lined fight, right? Sean Brady, slight favorite here over Michael Morales. Brady is the grappler. Trains out of Philly with the likes of Pfeiffer, all those guys. I always forget the name of the stupid camp, but he averages 3.6 takedowns per 15 minutes, 54% takedown accuracy, which is actually extremely solid. And we see here, other than that KO loss to Muhammad, where his nose was broken going into the fight, he has secured 5+ takedowns in 4 of his last 5 matchups. He's looked really great coming off the win over Leon Edwards, where he did find that submission. His striking has come a long way, but on the feet here, he's going to be outmatched, not only in striking ability, but also in reach and athleticism. Michael Morales, physical specimen, undefeated fighter at 18-0, fighting out of Ecuador. Apparently, there's like a soccer match in town for Ecuador coming up in New York, so they have a ton of fans there. A lot of those fans are just going to the Michael Morales fight. He's going to have a lot of backing here. And usually I'd say Brady would have the crowd, obviously, with this being in New York, him just being close by in Philly. But I think the crowd will be neutral. Morales, super flashy, at least recently with the KO wins over Magny and Burns, fighting to decision against kind of mediocre competition and Jake Matthew and Griffin. But he is improving rapidly. And I do want to kind of emphasize that. Brady isn't old for the division by any stretch, but Morales is 7 years younger here. Again, I do think he's going to be very fast on the feet. It could be tough for Brady to close distance, but again, this is super binary. So there's a reason this fight is lying closely, but whoever wins probably looks like a massive favorite. I'm on the Brady side. I do think he's going to be able to get the grappling going. As impressive as Morales has been, I don't know. He's giving moments to guys like Neil Magny. Gilbert Burns seems to be a shell of himself, and I just think Brady's been taking on the better level of competition. I'll also excuse him for that Bilal loss. Obviously, coming in, having to fight in Abu Dhabi with a broken nose is not an easy thing to do. But yeah, I would not be surprised if Morales caught Brady because he is that explosive. He is extremely athletic. You can catch him with a knee on a takedown coming in. He can land a big hook. I mean, this guy doesn't necessarily throw super traditional in his striking approach, but he is dangerous from everywhere. He has knockout power in all of his limbs. Sean Brady, certainly not the case for him, but on the mat, he is an absolute demon. And he scores really well, obviously, with the takedown upside. If Morales works his way back to the feet, Brady has the cardio to kind of rinse and repeat. He's not on Marab's level, but that same style, right, which really does play well for DFS. So I do like Brady here to get it done as a slight favorite. Probably will have a small bet on him on the money line. But again, you're going to be holding your breath when this fight is on the feet. In terms of DFS exposures, taking a look here on my other monitor, Brady not getting a ton of love. I mean, I think he's a little bit under owned, sub 30% on both sites at the time I'm recording this. And then we look at Morales, who I imagine is pretty popular here. Where is he? Not as much love for him either. So again, a fight that maybe is a little bit Underowned. Again, 14 fight card. You're probably going to want winners in all six of those spots if you're going to be taking anything serious down. So just keep that in mind. But binary matchup. Morales very live for the KO. Brady, I think more likely though, gets the takedowns he needs to secure the win either via submission or decision. We've never seen Morales lose, so we don't really know what he's going to be like if he's tested extensively here on the ground. So something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I just think Brady is still a level above. I do think Morales actually has the better career trajectory, though, but that is yet to be seen. Another matchup at 170 pounds here, a bit of a theme on this card, a lot of welterweights. We have the former champion Leon Edwards against Carlos Prates. So Leon Edwards has fallen on hard times, but you got to kind of take into account who he's been fighting, right? Brady, who we just talked about, excellent grappler. Bilal Muhammad, known for his grappling. Colby Covington, who he beat. And then the two wins over Usman, grapplers. So each of his last 5 fights have come against grapplers. He did beat up an old and aging Nate Diaz there, got caught at the end of that fight, but it has been 4 years, I think, since he has fought a true striker, and that's what he'll be seeing here against Carlos Prates. Leon, very cerebral. I think he may not have the speed advantage here that he used to over a lot of opponents on his rise through the rankings, but really good defensively. And the thing is, all this experience against wrestlers, I actually think he's going to have a grappling advantage here in this matchup. It's also notable Leon has never been knocked out. Pradas is a knockout artist. And yeah, this is kind of tough to call, right? Because Pradas, I do think, is the better striker at this point in their respective careers. I do think he's more dangerous. I do think he has more KO power. But Leon's never been KO'd. But we've said this before, right? Li Jingliang, never been KO'd before. Prates put him away. Jeff Neal, last time out, never been KO'd before. Prates put him away. We did see Ian Gary use his footwork to kind of outwork him for 4 rounds before he almost got finished in the fifth. This is a 3-round fight. So I do think there's value on Edwards. I think he's durable enough. He's also a southpaw, going to give Prates a bit of a different look than he's used to. I think he can make it interesting. And again, I'm not confident in Leon given his recent results, but I do think stylistically this is the best matchup we've seen for him in a while. Floating around plus 140 to plus 150, depending on your book. If you like Prates, he's minus 160 to minus 170. Will I be surprised here if Prates is able to knock out Edwards and put him away? No. But at the same time, it's just been so long since Edwards has had a favorable stylistic matchup. And I think he could get right here. I think he's a little bit disrespected on this money line. These fighting nerds are kind of a bit overhyped in general. I do want to admit that I have been lower on Prates than his results would indicate his skill level is. So just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt on this one. But again, I do think Edwards is very live for the upset. I like him a lot as an underdog here for DFS purposes as well, because I think he can mix in the takedowns. If it's just a low volume striking fight, he could maybe pull it off via decision, but he wouldn't score all that well. But I do think at very low ownership, 11% owned on DK, 7% owned on FanDuel, getting a former champion at those prices is very appealing to me as a tournament play. So doesn't look great in the model. Upside is questionable, but if he can get a few takedowns here and get the win, he could end up optimal. Again, Pradas obviously with the KO upside, a pretty good DFS play in his own right. All right, getting out of the welterweights here, moving down a weight class to talk about these 155 pounders. Beneil Dariush didn't make 155. He was a pounder or so over. I will say he looked better on the scale today, missing weight than he has in many of his recent fights. Dariush with the gray hair getting up there in age. At the same time, he did kind of turn back the clock a bit last time out against Moicano. He was rocked at one point, but he secured 5 takedowns on his way to a win. Nice win for him there. Probably saved his job, saved his spot in the rankings for sure. And he's taking on a really tough guy in Benoit Saint Denis here, but a guy who's only 6 years younger, definitely weathered and aged in his own right. Former, I don't know what the term is. He's essentially a Green Beret for the French. They're not called Green Berets there, whatever. Special Forces, something like that. But Saint Denis had mixed results, right? Impressive last time out against Rufy, a guy who fighting nerd who doesn't really grapple all that well. Slow start against Prepelec, did secure the win in that spot. Prior to that, losses to Moicano and Poirier. But Saint Denis comes out super aggressive, like he shot out of a cannon, throws that body kick really well. He has great wrestling, and he's very dangerous with the ground and pound and submission ability on top. This is a tough fight to call, and another fight where I'm actually leaning on the underdog because I do think Dariush is the more skilled of the two. I am very concerned though about the first round because we saw him against Oliveira and Saruki and just kind of overwhelmed in both of those spots. Dariush's chin isn't what it used to be. It used to be a strength for him. Can't say that anymore. But yeah, I think if he can weather that early storm, he's the better striker, technically speaking. 57% of the strikes thrown against him are defended compared to just 42 for Saint Denis. He's the better grappler, great submission offense, and defensively, I think he can stay safe if Saint Denis is able to take him down. It's also notable this is a southpaw versus southpaw matchup, so that body kick that's usually there for Saint Denis probably won't be there for him in this one. But again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about Dariush's chin. I do think he's one of the better underdogs on this card, though, at plus 150, plus 160, depending on your book. He is getting some love in terms of DFS exposure here. Taking a look, yeah, floating around 20%, just under on both sides. Saint Denis closer to 30%. Another spot where I'll be trying to get a little bit different from the field. But again, hold your breath. Hopefully, Dariush's chin holds up because if it does and he gets out of the first round, I think he's very live to win via decision or maybe like an attritional finish late, which would score pretty well for him as well. No water sip for me. I got Gatorade, but shouts out to the Occupy fellas. As always, when you do these shows alone, can't bounce it off someone like we do for NBA. So got to catch your breath every once in a while. But after that, we can move into the next fight here we have between Bo Nickel and Rodolfo Vieira. Bo Nickel, super prospect, right? Everyone loved this kid coming into the sport. Not everyone, but he was very, very highly regarded. One of the best wrestlers to step on the mat as an American the past few years. Really credentialed, but what we're learning is wrestling credentials don't always translate perfectly to MMA. He had those three nice wins to come into the promotion over a really low level of opponent. Took on Paul Craig and just kind of stood there and struck with him for 15 minutes. Did well, definitely won that decision. Scored terribly for DFS though. I think he could have easily grappled there. And then last time out against Renair de Ritter, a little bit overconfident, ate some big knees in the clinch, ended up finished, suffering his first loss. I will say for a cocky fighter like Nickel, it's usually a good thing to suffer that loss. It forces them to kind of address the holes in their game. But at the same time, I mean, I'm listening to him this week. He seems just as cocky as ever. He's taking on a guy here in Rodolfo Vieira, a jiu-jitsu specialist. And he's had kind of mixed results, but he's done a little bit better than I think some people expect, a little bit worse than others expected in this promotion. Win over Trayshawn Gore last time out, lost to Andre Petrosky on the feet the fight before that. Wins over Petrosian, Brundage decent, but he is a submission first grappler. Doesn't really have the great wrestling to take the fight to the mat consistently, but once he's there, if he's on top, he's extremely dangerous. I mean, this guy definitely chases submissions with fervor, but at the same time, his cardio and durability have been exposed at times. Obviously, against Hernandez, not going to be too surprised at that one. But yeah, he's getting up there in age. There is a 7-year age gap here. And Vieira, like most jiu-jitsu guys, doesn't really like to get hit. So it's going to be a question of what is Bo Nickel's game plan coming in here. I think he does have Mike Brown in his corner from American Top Team. I'm sure they're going to come in, try to push Vieira up against the cage, obviously defend any takedowns that come against him and pick him apart on the feet. But neither of these guys are great strikers, which makes this kind of volatile. I think Nickel would be wise to mix in some of the grappling of his own. We've seen historically wrestlers stay safe against jiu-jitsu players. But yeah, Nickel is a big question mark, in my opinion. I think the books have this fight going to the scorecards. He could find a finish, and he's going to need it to pay off this price tag. I'm not crazy about Vieira here. Again, I do think Nickel's overrated. It's a question of how overrated, but we're getting a bit of a discount on him, knowing that Nickel was like minus 500 in most of his fights prior, only minus 200 to minus 230 here, depending on your book. So I think Nickel gets it done. It's one of my least confident plays, though, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like the UFC wants him to get a win, but stylistically, this is an interesting matchup. You would think they'd maybe give him someone who doesn't know how to grapple. They're giving him a guy who prefers to grapple. So, again, a lot to be seen here. And it is an MSG card. They are trying to build his stock as a prospect. And I'll talk about this a bit more in some of these other fights, but you have to think about what the UFC wants on these pay-per-view cards. They are a business. And yeah, coming into the new year, I think they'd rather be boosting the stock of Nickel than an old and aging Rodolfo Vieira. Another interesting fight here, one I could certainly see going either way between Roman Kopylov and Gregory Rodriguez. These two guys are primarily strikers. Kopylov coming off a really disappointing performance against Paulo Costa, where he was kind of pushed back and outstruck. And then Gregory Rodriguez coming off an impressive KO win over Jack Hermanson. That's actually sending Hermanson down a weight class, which I don't really think is a great thing. Prior to that, was doing well against Cannonier before Cannonier came back and caught him. You can kind of describe both of these guys as glass cannons. They're extremely dangerous. We see all the KO wins here on Rodriguez's record, right? But at the same time, I mean, he is hittable. We saw him starched against Bruno Ferreira. Chidi Njokwani put that elbow through his head. Major cut. The fact Rodriguez fought through that certainly says something about his durability, but also being KO'd by Cannonier, and not the best version of Cannonier, mind you. He's a little bit fragile, for lack of a better word. On the other side here, we have Kopylov. And the biggest hole in Kopilov's game, it is one he's shored up over his last few fights, is that takedown defense. So to me, this fight becomes a question of, will Rodriguez grapple? And oftentimes when we want him to, he doesn't. I will say the last matchup he had where I really thought that was the clear path to victory for him was against Christian Leroy Duncan, who looked great last week, mind you. But he secured 4 takedowns there, shot for 12, had him on the mat for 8 minutes. And I think if he's going for that here, he could maybe find the submission against Kopylov. But standing, this is anyone's fight. I do think Kopilov's very live to pull off the upset via KO. I am on the Rodriguez side, but not with a ton of confidence. If I was confident he'd be grappling, I would definitely back him with a bit more aggression. But right now, fight I could see going either way. A fight very likely to end inside the distance, though, so probably one you're going to want exposure to for DFS. Rodriguez, the better play in terms of OF index, also more popular, though. Kopylov, sub 20% owned on FanDuel right now. That's too low to me. I would get some exposure to him over there for sure. Not a fight you're going to be stacking, but certainly a fight you're going to want most of your lineups, in my opinion. All right. We got a women's matchup here, I believe, at flyweight between Erin Blanchfield and Tracy Cortez. This fight represents a rematch of a fight I think that took place back in either Invicta or LFA years ago. Cortez was awarded that decision. It was one of Blanchfield's only losses, the other being the Manon Fiorot. But Blanchfield, I think, since then has made the bigger improvements. She's the much younger fighter. Her grappling has come a really long way. Her wrestling has improved. Her striking has improved. She's shown excellent durability. Throws a ton of volume now, which really wasn't a mark of her skill set earlier in her career. And she is the higher volume striker in this matchup by a decent margin. Lands 5.2 significant strikes per minute compared to Tracy's 3.7. Tracy, in a lot of her wins, is able to secure takedowns against inferior grapplers, but I don't think she's going to be able to do that here. And yeah, I mean, coming off a decent win over Arujo, was outclassed by Nami Yunus prior to that. Jazz Davicius kept her on the feet, was able to pick her apart. But Tracy, man, she's talented, right? But the UFC is really using her as a marketing vehicle. We're seeing her at MSG. She's at Knicks games this week. She's doing tequila commercials. She's doing a ton of media. And Blanchfield, she just fights. It's her bread and butter. She's the favorite here by a decent gap, and I think she's going to get it done. As far as DFS goes, it is a way to get different rostering her, sub 20% on both sites. Does seem to score all right, but keep in mind her last 2 fights were 5-round matchups. The win over Andrade via submission, I don't think she's going to be able to sub Tracy necessarily. Um, so yeah, I'm not crazier about her in DFS, but neither is the field. Not that interested in Tracy. It is women's MMA at a pretty high level, but I don't know. I'm pretty confident in Blanchfield here, maybe more than I should be. I just haven't been that impressed by Tracy in spite of some decent results. Really interesting matchup. You're going to have to pull up the graphics for this one for sure. We got Malcolm Wellmaker taking on Ethan Ewing. So Malcolm Wellmaker was supposed to take on Cody Haddon. That would have been a fun fight between a striker and a grappler. I thought Haddon was very live for the upset there. But now he's getting this Ethan Ewing guy on very short notice. When the fight was announced, I think everyone was like, oh, God, this is going to be brutal. But we all watched some film on Ewing. He seems half decent. Coming off a KO win of his own just a week ago. This fight will be taking place at a catchweight. But yeah, it's kind of tricky for me to really have any confidence in Ewing. And keep in mind, Wellmaker was priced for DFS for the matchup with Haddon, right, which was supposed to be a very competitive fight. So we had him at 8,400 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Now he's a minus 500 favorite, and he's not priced like one. So he's going to be extremely popular on both sites. Wellmaker, each of his last 4 wins have come not only by KO, but by right hook. He throws that extremely well. He's very dangerous. Ewing, primarily a striker as well, seems to have decent footwork, a little bit of power of his own, can throw a jab, but I think the reach advantage here is longer than the 2 inches that it's actually listed at. I think Ewing is kind of juicing up those numbers a bit. I also think most of Ewing's success, if you watch his film, comes backing his opponents up against the cage. Wellmaker, not really the guy to end up in that position. I think Wellmaker's going to get this done via KO probably early, but at the same time, I don't want to completely disrespect Ewing to the point that I think he's some can. I do think he's a better opponent than what Wellmaker saw his last time out against the Chris Moutinho. So it is actually a slight step up in level of competition. A little bit of another tangible information here for you. Wellmaker was working in construction, like digging ditches, doing electrical, I don't know, a lot of work with his hands, long days. He is a full time fighter now. Obviously, we should expect to see big improvements from him. He's a hot prospect, but a 31-year-old prospect at that. So that's a bit of an oxymoron. I do like Wellmaker to get it done here. He does look excellent in the model. Let's see here. Not one of the top OF index plays, though. But again, point per dollar, I do think he's excellent. I do think he's going to be extremely popular on both sites. Just not playing him is a way to get different, but I do think he could probably get the KO here in the first or second round. And at his price, that's probably enough to end up optimal. So I do like Weili here. I do think he gets it done. I have a best bet for him at the end of the show as well. I think Ewing's decent. I just think taking this fight on short notice, having to cut weight twice, even with this being up a weight class, being undersized, he just has so much going against him here. Um, and yeah, we'll talk about another guy in Susarkayev who had a similar situation last time out. But before that, let's get to this matchup between Kyle Dawkins and Gerald Meerschaert. Dawkins, this is his second stint in the UFC. Looked great last time out. It was kind of fluky. He had a KO over Michel Pereira. Really, really quick knockout there. Pereira didn't really get a chance to recover before that fight was called. But Dawkins kind of not the best frame for the division, a little bit slow compared to some of the top level of fighters that we're going to see here at 185 pounds. But at the same time, he's taking on a guy in Gerald Meerschaert who's far past his prime. 6 year age gap here. These are two southpaws, two primarily grapplers, two guys who primarily grapple, excuse me. But Meerschaert, his wins only come late against guys who are kind of fading at this point in his career. I think on the feet, Kyle is the better striker. I think he has the jiu-jitsu ability to stay safe if this fight is taken to the mat. And when Gerald's winning, it's against guys who gas. Kyle isn't a gasser. He has excellent cardio. So I do think Dawkins gets it done probably inside the distance. Gerald always seems live for that upset KO, and when he does get it, he is always optimal, other than against Barberina, because he's always a heavy underdog. But again, I do think Dawkins is the side here. I think the UFC is trying to build him back up on the second run. I don't know how high his ceiling is in general, but this feels like a matchup he should be able to secure the victory in. One of the tougher fights on the card here, and before I move on, let me just pull up the graphic because Kyle Dawkins is actually ranking third in the model in terms of OF index and not nearly as popular as some of the other top plays. Just 20% on DK, 35 on FanDuel. Love him as a DFS play. Obviously, the model is backing that as well. But moving right along here, one of the more competitive but also binary fights on the card between Chepe Mariscal and Pat Sabatini. This fight is a rematch of a fight that took place, I think, 9 years ago between these two. Sabatini is the grappler here. He's a bit chinny, but he's an excellent pressure wrestler, has really solid jiu-jitsu. But when this fight took place last time, Mariscal did enough, worked his way back to the feet, landed, didn't have huge moments, but did enough to kind of squeak out that win on the scorecards. This is a tough one, right? I think Sabatini's going to get his takedowns, but whenever this fight is on the feet, it's a situation where you're going to be afraid. It feels very similar to the Brady Morales fight, if I'm being completely honest, because Sabatini, his chin is even worse than Brady's. The issue is Mariscal, not really known as a power puncher. So, bit of a different matchup in some ways, very similar in others. I once again prefer the grappler, but I'm even more concerned about him here. I think Chepe is one of the better underdogs to mix into your exposures. I think both these guys could win a via finish, but more likely if there's a finish here is probably Mariscal by KO. I think Sabatini could win by decision, just kind of grind this out on the mat. But yeah, proceed with some caution. Again, Mariscal just a 73% takedown defense in the UFC. We actually saw Trevor Peek, I think, take him down in his debut fight. Obviously, not a great thing. Obviously, he'll be more prepared here coming in. But yeah, Sabatini's going to need to tuck that chin because if he doesn't, he could find himself lights out on the canvas in that one. So, speaking of age gaps, and I know that was a choppy segue. We didn't really have one in the last fight, right? But we got a huge one here between Angela Hill and Fatima Klein. Angela Hill, one of my favorite underdogs historically to back. She's always disrespected on the money line, but I will say it does seem like she's finally like over the hill. And this is a miserable pun. I hate that I said that. My brother said that on another stream we were on, but it is what it is, right? She's 40 years old. For a strawweight, that's rough. Did not look good last time out against Lucindo. Still competitive against some pretty decent opponents, but she's running into a really interesting up-and-comer here in Fatima Klein. Fatima trains full-time with Erin Blanchfield, who we described earlier as a good favorite on this card. Primarily a grappler, really solid regional experience. And she looked great in her debut, up a weight class against Jasmine Juice Vicious in spite of a loss. Since then, winning 2 fights via KO. Fatima at her price, no one's going to want to play her. 14% owned on DK, 16% over on FanDuel. If you want to get different, you can mix her in. I do think there's other payups I'm preferring, but again, if the field is feeling the same way, probably makes sense to get her into your exposures. Hill is historically durable, but at the same time, I think any moment now we can see her kind of fall off that cliff or that hill. Haha. But yeah, I mean, if you want to mix in Hill as an underdog, if this goes 15 minutes and mostly favorites are hitting, she could still end up optimal. She does land more than 5 significant strikes per minute. I just think that more likely than not, Fatima is going to take her down a few times, kind of make it difficult for her to really score well, even at a very, very cheap price tag. So on the money line, I don't like it. I do think that the price of minus 600 is very disrespectful, given Hill's extensive resume. But I do think Klein is an up and comer worth keeping an eye on. These are two fighters whose careers are headed in opposite directions. So we talk about Ethan Ewing taking this fight on short notice. Last time Eric Nolan took a fight on short notice against Bangasaur Sursakayev. Sursakayev himself took that fight on short notice, coming off a Contender Series win, and he did not look great, honestly. I was very high on this kid as a prospect. That Nolan performance set him back, in my opinion, a little bit. Good news for him, though, here. He's getting one of the softer matchups in the division against Eric Makhachev. Sursakayev rates as the best OF index play in the model. He's expensive, but great striker, really powerful, fights loose, can land knees, land kicks. He does it all, right? Throws feints, kind of baits his opponents into traps. And he's a great wrestler, too. And we saw that when he was having trouble on the feet against Nolan last time out, did start to lean on that grappling. Is going to be popular here at 30%, but honestly, I think he's going to be one of my higher exposed favorites. And while I do rate Sursakayev as a prospect, I do think he could run into some issues as he's facing better and better competition. But that's not what he's going to see here against Makhachev, who to me really isn't all that great. He did get the win over Cody Brundage last time out. Brundage was dropping him, or not dropping him, but rocking him. That was just an ugly fight. And again, I think Sursakayev can lean on the grappling here if he has any issues at all. Minus, I think, 1,000, depending on your book, to minus 1,200. I do think he gets it done, though. Top playing the model for a reason. I do have a best bet with him coming up as well, which we'll talk about in just a bit. We're getting through it here, guys. Once again, appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully the quality, at least the sound quality, is better today. I know my video isn't always great, but with this not being live, we're expecting a better video for you. I know it was unwatchable last week, which is super frustrating. Had a half-decent card, too, in terms of the takes, but this card being as big as it is, we said, hey, let's just record it beforehand and then figure out the internet stuff down the road. We don't want to miss out on this one. So opener here, this fight was put together pretty recently. We got Mateos Camillo against Slavaklas Borshev. I'm not going to try to say his first name. Borshev 8-6-1, his MMA record, not great, right? But prior to that, does have extensive kickboxing experience. He is a very cerebral striker. Again, similar to Sursakayev, can bait guys into traps. Really, really talented. And he's durable, too. Getting up there in age, though, does seem to be slowing down, and he has a major hole in his game in terms of the defensive grappling ability. Matuis Camilo is a guy who I don't have a great read on, if I'm being completely honest. He was securing takedowns against a tough out in Gabe Green. I think he won that first round until he kind of gassed himself out, overexerting himself. Maybe it was jitters of the first fight. I do think he has a clear path to victory here, though, if he tries to take Borshev down. But again, another binary matchup. If he can't get this fight to the mat, he's going to be outclassed in a major, major way. Camilo did recently shift camps to Extreme Couture. He could have, I don't know if Eric Nistik will be in his corner, but if not, it'll be someone very sharp, I imagine. They're going to tell him to go for the takedowns here. I think he will. And Borshev, decent getting back to his feet. But again, I do think getting up there in age, that's going to become increasingly difficult for him. Camilo, very, very athletic, strong, and 9 years younger here. He's going to be my pick. But again, Borshev on the feet, the much better striker. And his win conditions probably via KO. So another underdog you can consider for your DFS builds. Before I get to the best bets now, let's go ahead and give you guys quick dummy builds on both sites. So I want to use the model, right? And if you don't have access, just $7 a week to get behind that paywall. I mean, the top OF index plays here are all expensive. So we got to kind of prioritize. For me, I think I want to go with Islam. And then since Kyle's not as popular as Bangasaur, I'll probably go with him. I really do like Islam here. Again, 5 round fight, going to be needing takedowns. I think he scores extremely well. We'll go with Zane Weili as an underdog in the co-main event. Again, I'm picking Valentina, but with no confidence, really. Derek's on Weili. I mean, the model likes her more than Valentina, which usually tells us something. This is chalky, though, right? So we got to keep that in mind. To get different, we'll go with Dawkins as our other pay up. He's a bit lower owned than guys like Sursakayev. Then when it comes to underdogs, it doesn't feel great. He could get starched. I'm going to go with Leon. I do think he allows us to afford someone like maybe Brady here, and then we'll need one more underdog. I mean, Kopilov looks good. You can go with Borshev. I like Dariush. And again, Brady, he's in a volatile spot as well. He could get KO'd. So if you want to go a little bit safer, I don't know if it's safe or you go to maybe someone like Camille. This is a pretty good build in my opinion. Again, definitely leverage the model. Keep an eye on ownership. And if you're playing Makhachev and Weili, your lineup's going to be pretty chalky. Make sure you're mixing things up. Maybe leave even less salary on the table. Maybe I pull Camille, right? And we do go with someone like Brady. Oh, no. What am I saying? Scratch all that. Malcolm Wellmaker. Get him in there. Leave a few hundred on the table. Good way to get different. Over here on FanDuel, since we left him out on DK, we'll get Bangsor, Sursakayev in there. I would love to jam in Islam with him. It's going to make pricing tough, though, so keep that in mind. Wallmaker, kind of a free square at his price, is what it is. I like Sabatini's takedown upside. We can mix him in. Obviously, a risky spot for him there. Since we did we leave Daryushin? I don't remember. We can throw Daryushin. I probably wouldn't want him in too many lineups. But again, as a way to get different, I do think he opens things up. We could get Brady or Camillo here. Camillo definitely cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DK. Again, this is a chalky build with Makhachev and Sursakayev up there. We're leaving out the co-main. Maybe that's enough to get different. But again, get behind that paywall. Keep an eye on ownership and things because obviously you want to get a little bit different. But 14 fight card, it should be easier to get different than some of these 12 fight Apex cards we've been dealing with lately. All right, let's get into the best bets now. So last week we went 3-2, started 0-2, and then kind of got hot from there. So I'll take it. These are chalky, right? And next year, if we're doing the show, I'm going to try to do it a little bit different. Best bets right now, they're all minus 200 or better. They're usually kind of square sides, if I'm being completely honest. But I'm just trying to boost this record. Like my goal was to get to 60%. I don't know if we'll get there by the end of the year. Just a few cards left, but finally over 500 consistently now after a few bad beats. Sursakayev round one, I think he can steamroll Makhachev. Pretty happy with that, even at 160. Not the best number, is what it is. I like Dawkins by KO or submission. I think he should be able to finish Mearshart here. Not a guy who gasses, the much better striker, and he does have the grappling ability to mostly keep this fight standing. I like Wellmaker by KO. Again, I think some people will be on the under. If this fight is extended a little bit, I do think Ewing has decent enough footwork to maybe make that happen. I think he probably gets the finish here at some point. Kopilov versus Rodriguez. This one's scary. I actually like the over 1.5. I just think these guys are going to respect each other's power enough for this fight to carry at least into the second round. Then I'm on Islam Makhachev minus 5.5 on the point spread. Again, don't really want to pay minus 300 for him. Minus 5.5 kind of covers us. As long as he's getting 49, 46s on two of the cards, 48, 47 on one, he wins and covers that. And if he gets the finish, you're covered there as well. So again, these are my best bets. Really fun card. A lot of prelims, I know, but we threw Islam in there. Let's see what we got for long shots. And again, these aren't the longest shots. I mean, you could pick rounds to get even better odds, things like that. I like Rodriguez by submission. Do I think he'll grapple? No, I'm not confident in it. But if he does, he's very live to find that finish on the mat. We've seen Kopilov struggle against grapplers in the past. Bo Nickel by KO or sub. Decent value here. Rodolfo does seem to fold when things aren't going his way. I think Nickel could impose his will here if he's smart. Brady by submission, just like the number. Again, he could get starched. You could also maybe play Morales by KO, but I think Brady by sub at plus 400 is value. Then Edwards by decision. This was better earlier today, but plus 240. I think he's pretty live there. If you want to get even safer, you could maybe play the plus 3.5 on Edwards. It's closer to even money. But again, pretty fun card in general. All right. One more sip of drink. Appreciate you all as always, guys. Really fun card. Tomorrow or today, depending on when you're watching this video, UFC 322, slate locks at 6 p.m. Eastern. Find me on Twitter at NickMorrowDFS. Also, be sure to check the links in the description below. Get behind that paywall. You get Derek's slate breakdown, that daily plug. We have the Occupy model with ownership projections and OF index ratings on both DraftKings and FanDuel. We also have a lineup builder. If you're looking to enter a ton of lineups, obviously mass multi-entering is tough to do by hand. I can help you out in a big way there. We also have our Discord community. We're always in there laughing, sweating fights, making fun of the refs. We got some really sharp minds in there talking about bets and things like that. Sweating together too as things get close into these cards. I mean, I had a parlay a few weeks ago. It was great to kind of share that with the guys. And yeah, looking forward to another fun card tomorrow. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, helps us get more of this free content out to you. But take care, everyone. Have fun and good luck.